Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. We'll get started in just a minute. We're just waiting for a few more people to join. Hey, Caitlin, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday indeed. For the weekend, finally.
Do you have anything fun planned?
Sleeping.
love,
Yeah, just gonna sleep a lot.
love that. That's great. Cool. While we're waiting, everybody who's here so far, feel free to throw a GIF in the chat. Let's make it fun for what you're looking forward to this weekend. Or you can just write it out. If you're anything like me, you could spend 5 minutes trying to pick out the perfect GIF. Relaxing and sleeping is also a great option. I don't know what GIFs you'll find if you type in sleep. but
Just disease.
yeah, let's see it.
Oh,
Ooh,
yeah,
eating.
the eating. Yes, Brandon. Oh my gosh. The little pig.
Eating is a good one. Brandon, are you eating anything? Are you eating burgers? Is that what that means? Or just eating in general? Either one sounds great. Love a good burger, especially if it has good fries.
So good.
Sounds pretty good right about now.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get started in just a minute. I know a few more people are joining. Just finding time to. Nice.
Co-sign on the backflip into bed. Yes.
Yeah, I don't. That's a good trick. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing for everybody who gave us some fun gifts to look at. That was fun to learn more about what everybody's looking forward to. So we'll get started in just a minute. Before we do, let's just introduce ourselves. So everybody here knows who Caitlin and I are. So I'm Colleen. I know I see a few familiar faces in the audience. So good to see some of you again. And I lead our content, education, and brand teams at Airmeet. Super excited for our conversation today. We're going to be talking a lot about how to use data from events a lot better, which is personally one of my favorite topics to talk about. Caitlin, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm the head of growth and demand generation at People AI. In the past, I've also overseen field marketing. So a lot of in-person and virtual events from before the pandemic through the pandemic. So I'm really excited about this particular topic. We've had a lot of experience trying to get people engaged during the pandemic and then afterwards when we were starting to go back in person and trying to make that interesting one more time. So
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
awesome. Yeah, super excited to have this conversation with you today. And one last thing before we dive into it, I want to quickly talk about the different buttons that you all have the ability to click around and engage with us, just so we can really engage with one another today and have a really interactive conversation. Some of you I know are super familiar with Airmeet and all of the different ways to engage, but on the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to click on different emoji reactions where you can send us live reactions. So if you like what Caitlin and I are talking about or just want to hype us up, you can feel free to throw some emoji reactions out there our way. And right next to that, you'll see an option where you can raise your hand. By pressing that, it lets us know that you have a question and would like to be brought up on stage with us, which is really fun. So feel free to raise your hand at any point throughout the conversation. You don't need to wait to the end of the session today. It could be at any point. You can come up here with us. You can either ask a question or just share an experience that you have, and we would love to hear from you and learn from you. All right. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll be keeping a very close eye on the chat and the Q&A the whole time. So feel free to just keep throwing messages and questions in there throughout the whole time today. So first, want to give an overview of what we'll be talking about today. So a few quick things. One, we'll be talking about what actually is event intent. We'll talk about why it's important, what you could be missing out on if you're not using it, and we'll be sure to give a clear definition of what we mean when we say event intent. We'll also talk about how to use event intent data for stronger marketing, sales, and customer success. We'll give you some examples of those and even a couple templates that you can start using. And we'll cover how to strategically plan your webinars to help drive more quality interactions. And we really hope you'll leave today's conversation with tactical ways to really engage and target specific buyers at the right time using the intent signals from your events, with, of course, the ultimate goal to book more meetings and accelerate pipeline for you as a marketer and your whole company. So before we talk about what event intent data really is, I want to give some background on why it's important. So 80% of customers are more likely to buy from a brand that offers personalized experiences. This really isn't a surprise. We all know personalization has been a very large topic for all areas of marketing: website, email, paid ads. I'm sure I'm missing a very big one. But since personalization has become such a big topic for a while now, a lot of marketing teams have really started relying on the same ways to approach personalization. And now it's really important for sales and marketing teams to find new ways to get buyers' attention. Caitlin, anything that you want to add to this?
No, it's extremely true. We've all kind of adopted the same best practices as we've gotten better about gathering data and understanding, who's who and what their pain points are. And we've gotten a lot of information just off the internet, looking at LinkedIn and seeing what their history is, what, charities do they represent or work with. And you can get really, really personalized, but we're all kind of doing the exact same thing. So it's no longer that personal anymore. You can kind of automate this idea of personalization. So yeah, so it's kind of a hard time to step out and be seen. You have to be really creative right now, and you can get with events.
Exactly. And to that point too, today we're of course going to be talking all about this in the context of events and talk through really how to think through the signals that you capture from events and how they can be used. Because events in particular, if somebody signs up for an event, everybody that's here today was willing to block 45 minutes or an hour on their calendar, which is a really great signal in itself that you're all interested in learning more about the topic that we're talking about, which is a great sort of insight to us into what type of intent you might have. So you attending the event is a lot in itself, but all of the data that we get within the event itself, like poll questions, Q&As, things like that, provide a lot more data. And if you think about something like another marketing type of offer, like an ebook, where you're probably just capturing first name, last name, email, an event can give you way more than that. So that's why we'll be focusing on that part of it today, to sort of take a look at events and how this sort of stacks up in other ways you can be capturing data. Let me pull up my slides again. All right. So we've already given some pretty big hints on this, but want to define what we mean when we say event intent. So event intent is made up of not just registration and attendance, but also how each contact and attendee has engaged with polls, sessions, chat, and a lot more. And there's so much data that can be captured from events, but more often than not, marketers typically really rely on just two metrics from events. And that's not including pipeline, leads, revenue, or any of those other metrics. But if you think about it, a lot of times marketers just rely on registrant numbers and attendee numbers and revolve sort of email promotion, follow-up just around those two things, when there's so much more other things to look at. Like if you wanted to, you could organize an entire event designed to collect the exact type of insights that you want to. So you can tailor your poll questions around that, which we'll talk more about later, and really build your event engagement strategy to get the data that you want to from your attendees. Caitlin, anything else that you want to add to this?
No, I think you hit it right on the head on this one. This is perfect.
All right. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll based on that. I see a few people have already answered it, which is great. But curious to hear, based on what we were just talking about, do you leverage more metrics than just registrants and attendees from your events? It looks like over a third said yes, which is great. If anybody, we still have a few votes coming in. Everybody feel free to vote. And if you put yes, we would love to have you on stage at some point over the next 30 or so minutes to join us and tell us what other metrics that you've been using. And if you said no, you're in the right spot. We'll tell you how to change that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. Thank you to everybody who voted. Cool. And I'm going to pull back up my slides. All right, so before we go through and give some examples and tactical ways of how to start using this data, I want to just sort of highlight some of the challenges that can come up if you ignore event intent data. And for the people that answered no to that poll question, would love to also hear from you in the chat. Like, what do you feel like, what gaps have you been running into by not using more data than just registrant and attendee? Feel free to let us know additional challenges that you might be running into, and we can help give you some ideas and advice there. So If you think about what challenges happen if you don't use intent data from your events, you could really be missing out on capturing data on attendee behavior, which can ultimately be used to personalize pre and post event outreach, which will, of course, help all your event numbers. And you'll also limit the ways that you can engage with and capture engagement and activity metrics that will also help you better segment leads based on intent, which we'll talk more about in a bit. And it also sort of creates unscalable methods for engaging with buyers. So we'll talk all about these different challenges and the ways that we can sort of the tips that we can give you to help not face these challenges. So, Caitlin, do you think there's any other challenges that you would say when you don't use data from events? Anything that I didn't cover?
Oh gosh, you don't use data from events. I mean, the follow-up makes it really generic. It's really hard to. Previously, like before we were doing polls and asking questions and like being really active in the chat, I would have all of my sales reps on the event with me, and they would just be like listening in and using that, basically the content, and to do follow-up. And that was like the best that we could do. But it was such a time block for our sales team. And when we started doing polls and we started asking questions, and we would have someone kind of dedicated to make sure that they were monitoring and engaging the audience in the chat as well, then we were able to take that data and send it to the sales team. So if they couldn't make it, then they still had that content and they can do relevant follow-up and have like really good conversations afterwards. It just made it a whole lot easier. So
Yeah.
right out the gate, follow-up is a big one.
Yeah, I think follow-up is such a big topic too. And it's for both marketing and sales, big time, right? Like marketers typically, more often than not, we've all done this, is just sending follow-ups based on if you've attended or not attended. Those are the two ways that you follow up. It's usually just one email, here's your recording, and that's it. Versus, if we wanted to take the poll question today and send a certain email to let's say those who selected no, we don't use a lot of event data, we could pick those people, send them a follow-up email that says, here are the ways that you can improve and use more event data. We could personalize the follow-up with some of the things that we're capturing throughout the time today.
Yep.
And I would also add to one thing that is a huge part of this, and this could be a webinar in itself, but one of the massive underlying reasons capturing and using data from events is so important is because with cookies going away, event intent data is going to be a very big source of first-party data. That is given to you, of course, directly from your buyers, customers, and that will allow you to customize more experiences based on information given to you directly from your buyers. So events are going to become like a more and more important way that you can capture that data without relying on other third-party ways to sort of fulfill your database and get fields on your contacts that you need. So it's a big topic. Could talk about that one all day. But awesome. Let me pull up a few slides and we'll start talking through why event data is so important. All right. So this is one of my favorite sort of outlines, and we published a blog on this recently. So I'll share the link to that in just a second. But just wanted to highlight a few reasons why CMOs and really all marketers, marketing leaders should care about event intent. First, it's first-party data. We just talked about that, really making sure you can capture as much as you can provided directly from contacts is going to be super important. It also allows you to make the most of attendees' time by creating really great and personalized experiences. It also allows you to capture contact-specific insights to drive that personalization and really gives you the opportunity to optimize collaboration with sales and customer success. So I'm going to go ahead and actually share that blog in the chat just in case anybody wants to check it out. It's from our Airmeet CMO, Mark Killens. He put that together with all of his thoughts on event intent. So definitely recommend taking a look at that to learn more about it. And I just want to pause quickly and just announce an offer that we have running. So Airmeet, we're offering one free webinar of up to 500 attendees. So if you're ready to start capturing and using more data from your events, this is a really great place to start. Just shoot me a message if you're curious to get started and I can help you there. And while I'm talking about this offer, I will say something that relates back to what we're talking about today. If I wanted to, what I could do is launch a poll right now and say, are you interested in learning more about this offer? You could click yes or no, and I would then have a really significant piece of data on you. there's of course a balance of how pushy you want to be with the data that you're capturing, which is why I did not do that. But if I wanted to, I could have. All right. So now we're going to talk about how to actually use event intent data for marketing, sales, and customer success. We'll focus primarily on marketing and sales in the examples that we'll walk through, but we'll talk through customer success as well. And again, if anybody has any questions or ideas as we're going through this, please just put them in the chat. You can come up on stage and have conversations with us. This portion is going to be super conversational, and we'll be giving you a bunch of ideas for all three of these different teams. So first, let's start with marketing. There's a lot of ways, and Caitlin, I'm sure we can come up with a very long list of things and ways to use event data for marketers, but I'll start with one specific example, and then Caitlin would love to hear your thoughts on other ideas that you have, and anybody else in the audience, feel free to let us know if you have any other ideas as well. So this is a pretty simple example, and I can share this template with you all just so you can copy and paste it, use it for yourselves as well. But with something as simple as registrant event history, something like that piece of data will allow you to get visibility into who's attended multiple of your events versus somebody who has not attended any of your events. I know we have a few people in the audience today whose names are very familiar from previous events. So what you could do as a marketer is create really personalized event invites to build and engage your community. So if somebody, which I know we have a couple of you in here today that have attended 2 or 3 of our events, we could send a more personal invite and say something like, thank you for attending, 3 of our recent events. We really think you would enjoy this next one that we have coming up. And that'll really help, one, engage community members that are already familiar with your brand and have been enjoying the experiences so far. And 2, it'll hopefully help drive your conversion rates as well from your email invites. So I'll share the template to this just in case anybody wants to steal it, but that's a super simple way to use some of the data that you're capturing from events. Caitlin, do you have any other ideas that you want to share from the marketing side of things?
Yeah, I think to your point, being able to look back and see the history of what people have attended previously is really great. It's almost like an Amazon recommendation. It's like, you bought this in the past, I think you might want to check this out too. So you can kind of keep educating people as they go. Another thing, especially if you're doing any sort of ABM, is taking a look at the people that you had previously engaged with at attended event, and then maybe look on LinkedIn or ZoomInfo or whatever third-party database that you might have, and see what other relationships and peers that could be engaged as well. Like maybe they could invite a peer. And so you can be like, hey, you attended this. Maybe you'd want to invite your friend. I see maybe John might be interested. Something like that. Start to get more expansive in like the buyer committee. And you can do that from an ABM perspective, depending on what count you're targeting and what stage they're in. So there's a lot you can do with that.
That's awesome. I'm going to pause. Does anybody in the audience have any ideas? Does anybody want to raise their hand who's brave enough to come on stage on a Friday? I know it's a Friday. Everybody's ready for the weekend. In the meantime, I'll share a link that has the template of the email template that we just went through, just in case you can directly copy it from that blog post. If nobody has any other ideas on marketing, we can jump over and talk through some sales examples. All right. So for sales, similar to marketing, there are a lot of ways, especially as we as marketers know from the sales side, giving them the right tools for follow-up after events is super important. It'll really help drive better interactions after events and really help. It allows marketers more ways to give sales helpful insights that can help drive quality conversations after events. And I'll give one of the examples that I'll give is something that we're actually doing now. Airmeet is doing this now. We just started doing group demos. So we hold them weekly where, people can come in a live environment, experience Airmeet. So of course, that's a very high intent event that we hold. If people are coming, they're very curious about the product. So we have a poll question in that event that asks how many virtual events they hold per quarter. So this is a poll question that after the event, we'll equip sales with the answer to that question of how attendees answered it. So if somebody is holding 12 events a quarter, our sales team will definitely want to talk to them about why they should be using Airmeet. So questions like that are a really helpful way to empower sales with conversations after events. And the other thing that I would recommend here is partnering with your sales team to understand what data would be helpful for them from events. They might suggest maybe this isn't the question that they would prefer to get answered. Maybe they would prefer learning something else to help qualify the attendees in an event. So that would be my tip there, is partner with your sales team to understand what they want to be getting from people attending your events. Caitlin, do you have any examples that you want to share for how sales can use more event data?
Yeah, specifically working with sales, we ran into a problem where our sales team really wasn't understanding the pain of each of the personas that we were going after. And so we would start using polls to capture the use cases that people were interested in during the event. So whether or not our product did X, Y, and Z, which one of these use cases resonates most with you? And then we would provide that information to sales in the follow-up. And so they knew immediately, like, this person attended this event because this is the pain point and this is the use case that they want to buy. And it just speeds up the sales process. It makes the conversation so much easier, so much clarity moving forward. And it's just something that the sales team had a hard time kind of getting their hands wrapped around unless they had a specific meeting with that person. So it just accelerated the sales cycle so much quicker from just a very simple poll from the event.
Yeah, to your point too, it helps really accelerate the conversation in itself, because especially if you're capturing a piece of information that's already part of the qualification process for sales, they can then just skip that part, get to the next part, personalize their outreach a bit more, and just speed up that process overall. So yeah, I love that example. All right, we'll get into talking about customer success. And just a reminder, if anybody wants to share their own examples or ask us any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll be able to get to those. But we just have a few more things to get through. So if we talk about customer success, I love this one because I think this is one that isn't typically thought about too much. But events can really be used to understand, especially if you have a product where your customers have the ability to expand, upgrade, which most products do. Events can be a really great way to understand your customers' intent and how they vision themselves using their product. An example that I would give for customers would be if you have a product launch event of a product that let's say it's on your enterprise plan. If you have 100 customers that are on your smaller plan that attend that event to understand more about that feature release, product release, whatever it may be, that's a really good indicator that they could be open to an upgrade. And that's something that your customer success team, your account management team can follow up on to really use what your customers are showing interest in your events to figure out if there's opportunity to expand those accounts. And of course, events can also play a big role in retention for customers as well. If you're holding more like educational type of events that show your customers how to use certain parts of your product, different ways that they can be using it, that could be a really great tool to help drive retention as well. Caitlin, any examples or use cases that you would share on the more customer side of things?
Yeah, I like to take a look at what accounts are starting to show risk for churn and start to develop a plan around a webinar series or like lunch and learn specifically to kind of capture and educate the key people within those accounts and kind of help alleviate some of the customer service inquiries that might be coming through that might just be they just don't know how to use the product or have different expectations than what the product needs to do, XYZ. So it's a really good strategy to partner with your customer success team to prevent churn and just make sure that you're getting those renewals and you're getting that loyalty and you're creating brand ambassadors from just simple tips and tricks to use the product better that they might have missed. So.
I love that idea. That is a great idea. Yeah, we're going to start doing that. We're going to steal that one.
By all means.
All right. And I just want to show one quick sort of summary of what we talked about so far. This is one of the blogs that I shared earlier, but it's a good summary that shows what we just talked about and some examples. But I think this is a really great way to just see how event intent data is at the center of how marketing, sales, and customer success can collaborate. It's a really great tool and set of data that will help empower all of these teams. So yeah, I think it's just a really great visual to sort of show that. And one thing that I'll say is today we just sort of scratched the surface. We could talk about this for a very long time. There's so much data that you can get from events. You can get information on your registrant and attendees and just like profile data. You can get more data on session performance, all of the engagement data, and then all of that goes over to your CRM where you can, of course, segment your audience further. So there's so much that you can do with all of the data in several different ways. It's just important to think about what you want to prioritize as a marketing team, sales team, and prioritize based on that to make sure you're planning and capturing the data that's most important for your team. And then just to sort of bring it back to what we were talking about in the beginning of why event data is important, if you think about if you're only using that registrant and attendee data, you're not taking full advantage of what you're already spending resources, time, your team to plan, execute an event. I would really recommend just taking full advantage of everything that you're already capturing in your event. So I would think about it this way. And again, I'll go back to the ebook example. If you compare an event to something that you're doing, like an ebook or even a newsletter, maybe, where you're just capturing email and some engagement data, if it's a newsletter, opens and stuff. But comparatively, an event is a really great way and a great marketing offer to get all of this data. And then I'll just mention again, just this free webinar offer, just DM me, email me, message me, let me know if you're interested and I can help you get set up. But those were all of the topics and slides that we wanted to get through. So now we have time for some Q&A. If anybody wants to throw anything in the chat, Q&A, again, you can raise your hand and come up on stage. Just let us know.
We're very nice, we promise.
We're very nice. Or if anybody wants to share, if they plan on using any examples that we shared today, if you're going to do anything with your event data, let us know.
Oh, there was one from Rina. When we compare the outcome of the events we hosted 2 years ago, and we see that it takes more and more effort to fill in the online events. Any tips you can share on how to do better? I have some thoughts on that, but you want to take it first?
No, you go. You go. You got it.
So this is super true, specifically coming after the pandemic. I get a lot of requests from my sales team that says, we want to be back in person. I'm like, it's really hard to find where in the world people live now. They're not close to headquarters. They've moved everywhere. So virtual is still a very strong strategy for us because people moved, wherever. They're not in the cities or in clusters anymore. So things that I started to do is I created a bit of a buffer on any event that we're launching. And I started polling and putting out surveys to learn more about pain points and understanding what our audience needs from our product in order to drive better content and then also drive a better type of event. So making an offer that's kind of compelling. For example, we would put a side pop on our website for new visitors to understand who was coming to our website, what personas were coming to our website. And then I'd have an idea like, okay, well, this persona is really hitting our website, but we haven't been targeting them at all. So maybe let's pivot and let's find a different persona that might be feeling the pain right now that we hadn't thought about before. So it's just kind of different ways that you can find insights to kind of pivot your content and your target market could help fill events.
I love that. And one other thing too, I'll give a content perspective on this answer. So if you think 3 years plus ago, webinars were very much like the same structure. You had your slide deck, you had your 45 minutes and 15 minutes for questions type of thing. I think now, especially just with all of like the video streaming services, all of that, from like a content perspective, thinking through, you would want to have like speakers talking through slides for 30 minutes straight. Like, how can you make it engaging? How can you involve your audience a bit more? I would also say too, something that we focus a lot on for Airmeet events, especially if we're doing more than one session is keeping them shorter. Everybody here probably doesn't want to sit through a full hour or more than that of just straight talking. So making it more like episodic, interesting, entertaining, and shorter sessions. So I think from a content perspective, just thinking through like how to make it engaging and what people would want to watch and take time out of their day to sit for.
Really good call.
And then I'll read Hannah's question. Hannah loves the personal event invite use case. Are there any additional ways you've used event data to personalize marketing emails at scale? This is a really good question. So there's a lot of ways you could do this, like how many events they've attended. You could also do something, and this will fully depend. I'll walk through a couple ideas. Another really cool thing that you can do as you have people register for your events is think through what fields that you want to capture when they register. So aside from things like their business email, maybe job title, is there anything else that would be really interesting for you to capture upon registration? Like maybe you want to ask somebody, what topic are you interested in? Or like, what's your main priority? Certain questions like that. Again, that's a good thing to partner with sales on to get that piece of data. And then what you can do is use that for your email invites or follow-ups and pull in those specific things. And then the second thing I would mention too is just the poll question data is super interesting to pull into emails as well, especially if you have, like today we asked a yes or no question. It's not like we had a list of like 10 options that we would need to break down and send personalized emails for each one. If you have it short and sweet, that'll make it easy to personalize at scale different email follow-ups as well. Caitlin, anything that you would want to add to that?
Oh, you took the thoughts right out of my head. It was where I was like, right, well, yeah, cosign.
You're welcome, Hannah. Thanks for the question, Hannah. All right, let's see. I'm just going to read through Tatiana's. I'm going to read it in my head. Okay, actually, I'm going to read this out loud. Should the max webinar attendee capacity be inversely proportional to annual contract value if your minimum webinar attendees be capped at 10, for example? Caitlin, do you have any thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, depending on your webinar provider platform, fill it to the brim. I would try to get as many people exposed to attend as possible. I would never put a cap on exposing people who are interested to your product or to the thought leadership that you're providing. I think on the flip side, if you don't have a product that's for a specific market segment that they wouldn't be able to afford it, you just want to do a better job of targeting maybe the refining your ICP and what companies you should go after, maybe employee size or revenue, so that you're filling it with people that will be able to afford the product. So you're not just kind of casting this super, super, super wide net and then having sales follow up on people that aren't in the position to buy yet. They're too early in their business stage, and so they're not quite ready for the product. So that would be my concern. But aside from that, like if people are interested, bring them on in. Let them know.
I agree. Unless you have a use case where like it's for a certain set of executives and like a super, like maybe it's one of your executives hosting event, then you can err on the smaller side. But +1 to Caitlin, anybody who's interested, talk to them.
Bring them on in.
Yeah, we'll take them. All right. And then also from Tatiana, no need to apologize for any questions. How can one be getting data on personas landing on websites with personal data privacy laws in place, especially stringent GDPR laws in Europe and UK? Yeah. Caitlin, do you have any thoughts on that? I see you like ready to go.
Great question. In Europe. So we do a banner on the website that will just pop up that says, what team are you on? And then it has our key personas that we are looking for to learn more about. And so the person can either X out of that and they don't have to answer it. And if they do, they can self-identify which team that they're on. And then we'll drive them to the solution page that's built for that team and helps walk through the use cases that's most popular for that persona and those pain points. So it's a total opt-in experience. And we don't collect, any other information other than what team are you on, so that we know what personas are hitting our website. And that's only for the new visitors. We're not so much concerned about the repeat visitors. We generally know who they are. So it's the new people visiting our website, so we can give them a better, more personalized experience and capture that information that way. If that helps.
Yeah, that's great. I'd also add too, you could think about, if you don't already have like a chat bot on your website. I used to work for a company called Drift, which was had a chat bot which you could use on your website. Something like that's also a great option to capture information in more conversational way, just so you don't always have to extend your forms or things like that. There's some ways to make it more nice ways and easy that don't seem like too obtrusive, that you can work into your website experiences.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions from anybody out there? Or anybody want to share any ideas that they have?
Or did we give you enough ideas? Or you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to use these. This is good. I love the thumbs up. Yes.
I got some hearts. Thank you to whoever did that. All right. If there's no more questions, we can go ahead and end the session. But thank you, everybody, so much for joining. I hope everybody has a great rest of your Friday, has a great weekend. And thank you so much, Caitlin. It was a great conversation today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love this topic and sharing ideas. So this was really great. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye.